So it is historic, the statewide investment that is being made in Texas community colleges, and thanks to the leadership and partnership of the commissioner. And it's I think, important because it's supporting us for who we serve and how well they do. And I think folks may take a step back from something that's performance-based, but thanks to the success that we've had over many years at Alamo Colleges, I think we kind of said, bring it on, right?
We will kick off our fireside chat with Dr. Harrison Keller, Commissioner of Higher Education. But before we welcome him up, let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Keller. Dr. Keller is Commissioner of Higher Education and Chief Executive Officer for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. He is a sixth-generation Texan with more than 25 years of experience in state budget and policy, university administration, fundraising, and building coalitions among higher education institutions, school districts, and policymakers to expand opportunity through education. Dr. Keller's appointment as the state's sixth commissioner of higher education was effective in October of 2019. Among the major initiatives and innovations that Dr. Keller has led at the coordinating board is working with the higher education leaders, employers, and policymakers who don't always agree with one another. So thank you for doing that, Dr. Keller, to develop the state's current strategic plan for higher education, building a talent-strong Texas. Please help me welcome Dr. Harrison Keller and Dr. Flores, who will now kick off our fireside chat. Thank you.
All right. So I think, Commissioner, one of the things is providing. I know things are pretty hectic and busy in Austin, but can you kind of lay the groundwork by talking to us a little bit about Talent Strong Texas, and then of course being in the community college sector, I have a little bias about House Bill 8. So, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So first, Chancellor, I just want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. We are so proud of the work that you and your team are doing at the Alamo Colleges, and the accolades that are well deserved. So of course, it's fantastic to be here to talk about House Bill 8. I do think it's important to ground the discussion in the Talent Strong Texas work. I became commissioner just a little over 4 years ago. And actually in my last job interview with Governor Abbott, one of the things that I told him is that, we'd been with our state's previous plan for higher education, which was called 60 by 30 Texas, for a few years. And frankly, I didn't see that it was driving a lot of decisions at the Capitol, sometimes even within institutions. And I thought we needed to rethink the plan. And so I had about 4 or 5 months on the job. And then, of course, COVID hit. You and I came in similar times. Mm-hmm. And then it turned out these weren't the jobs we thought we signed up for. But the need to update our state's goals became even more urgent during the pandemic, because what we saw is our economy was accelerating in directions that we didn't anticipate, and things were happening faster than employers expected. We had hundreds of thousands of Texans who were out of work, and sometimes needed to be reskilled and upskilled just to get a similar job in the same industry. And frankly, we didn't have the workforce education infrastructure as a state to meet those challenges. So it was even more urgent for us to update our goals. So we engaged hundreds of community leaders across the state. We polled the Texas public. We worked with policymakers. We distilled all of that into a new plan for Texas called Building a Talent Strong Texas. And so that's got 3 major pillars. One is we expanded our focus beyond just traditional the population's coming right out of high school into higher education, pay more attention to adult learners, as you were talking about a few minutes ago, Chancellor. But we put an important marker down that we didn't just want to award more credentials. So I've worked in higher education a long time, and of course we're good at coming up with new credentials, right? But we didn't want to just make up new credentials and claim that we're making progress. So we put a marker down that we only want to count credentials that are what we call credentials of value. Credentials of value in our Texas economy. And they're credentials of value because Texas employers value them. And then finally, we brought the research, development, and innovation mission into our plan. Our previous plan didn't have anything on research and development. That plan ended up being really important for guiding our work on community college finance, guiding our work with the universities on research and development, and also guiding our work on student financial aid. So I think that was an important precursor to the work that came later, where in this last legislative session, you saw the legislature really behind this vision for building a talent-strong Texas, and we had a historic legislative session for higher education.
So I think as part of that, you mentioned both. You were being generous in saying that plan had been there for a few years, but so Talent Strong Texas in particular, and then historic legislation for us, and we see the net new investment we're able to make in our students. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about House Bill 8 and the impact that it has had on the community colleges, and through your leadership as well as partnership? And so I do want to give the commissioner a lot of credit for his work and what he did, making this part of a really frenetic session, right? And putting it at the top. And I didn't know this until Priscilla mentioned it to me, but really, if you have a low-numbered bill, that is a high priority of state leaders. But so House Bill 8, right? So can you tell us a little bit about
that? We did a lot of work in the interim. So there was actually a bill in the previous legislative session that set up a state commission, and the governor gave us some resources for that commission. Also, our Texas Philanthropies and National Philanthropies got behind that work. And so my team and I supported that commission's work. We had legislators, we had community college leaders, we had members of the public on the commission. We took the deepest dive any state has taken into these issues around community college finance. And so we examined who's participating in community colleges, what kind of results are we getting, how is that changing, and we also looked at the cost drivers. And there were a lot of important contributions that came out of that work that helped shape this new finance system. The other thing that happened, though, is that the community college leaders across the state, of course, you and your colleagues, Chancellor, really came together and supported the work of the commission. And as the recommendations came together, we were able to work closely with community college leaders across the state and other stakeholders to develop a bold new vision for higher education that frankly went a lot farther than I think a lot of the policymakers might have expected. And so that was only possible because we worked together in partnership. We listened to the different concerns and considerations from the smaller rural colleges, from the fast-growing urban colleges. We took all of that input, and it all impacted the recommendations. What we came back with essentially was a recommendation to completely overhaul the whole system, to not just tinker around the margins, but convert our system from where we'd historically just funded community colleges on the basis of seat time. How many students did you have enrolled in different types of courses? To now, 95% of the state's funding for community colleges is driven through a new outcomes-based formula for production of credentials of value, with more if they're in high-demand fields, for students transferring, or for students taking 15 hours of dual credit or dual enrollment courses that apply to either academic or workforce credentials. We weighted those outcomes because we recognize if you have a student who is a low-income student, if you have a student who was not college ready when they were enrolled, or we actually found the highest cost drivers being, if you have an adult learner who's an adult who's been out of school for a while, they're going to need additional support to be able to stay on track and be able to complete that credential. And those adjustments are recognized and included in the new formula. We also, for the smaller and rural colleges, we stabilized their funding with that other 5% of funding to make sure that all of our colleges are going to have a baseline of funding to be able to support their instruction and operations. So this was really a historic shift in how we fund our community colleges. The other piece that is especially going to be felt this next fiscal year is the legislature agreed to make the system dynamic. So we had funded community colleges based on the historical data. All the colleges knew how much state funding they were going to get for the next 2 years. And so the formulas we had only sort of divided up the pie, more or less, depending primarily on how many courses and what types colleges taught. That meant that all the colleges were in competition with each other. Right. So as you have a college that's fast growing, they get more of the pie. A college that their enrollments are stable, they may get less funding. Now that's gone in the new House Bill 8 finance system. The colleges are just in competition with themselves.
Right.
And so the idea is to have a dynamic system where there's particular dollar amounts attached to those outcomes. And if the colleges outperform the projections, that means that's additional funding to the college, regardless of what everybody else does. And we sat down with the policymakers, with Lieutenant Governor, the Speaker, the Governor, the key members of the legislature, and we talked about how that could mean that we need to ask for additional money. We might need a supplemental appropriation to fully fund the outcomes-based formula. And they all agreed that this was a critical investment in the future of Texas. So at the end of the day, the overall, if you count student financial aid and the funding, new funding to colleges, it was about a 30% increase in our funding, state funding for community colleges.
So this is really a moonshot in itself. It is historic, the statewide investment that is being made in Texas community colleges, and thanks to the leadership and partnership of the commissioner, to bring it home to San Antonio for us. And we are the second largest, but just looking overall at the list, received the highest amount of overall funds. Under the previous legislation, and this is fairly simplistic, there's more to tease out, but we would have just received net new, the previous, which was enrollment and class-driven, about maybe $5 million, right? Under the new historic legislation, we actually received $25 million, which gave us a net new $20 million to reinvest back in our students. And so it's historic in that it's not zero sum. We're not competing against 49 other community colleges. It's additive, and it's I think important because it's supporting us for who we serve and how well they do. And I think folks may take a step back from something that's performance-based, but thanks to the success that we've had over many years at Alamo Colleges, I think we kind of said, bring it on, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and there's another piece I think would be good to emphasize. I'm sorry that Senator Menendez had to leave because Senator Menendez and his colleagues they got behind increased support for the students directly and student financial aid.
Yes.
And so the other historic investment was historic increases in student financial aid this session. And so for students at community colleges, state colleges, our TSTCs, this put the overall, we're serving about the same share of eligible students at the two-year institutions as we do for the universities. And what we were just talking about before we left, that puts us in striking distance, hopefully, for this session of getting to full funding for our need-based aid, which would be our number one request as we go into this next legislative session because of those historic investments. not only did they put more money into student financial aid, they also let us increase the scope of who can benefit from that to include those short-term workforce programs. So the legislature really got behind the vision outlined in Building a Talent Strong Texas, got behind our colleges, got behind our innovators, and also is getting behind our students to give them the resources to eliminate financial barriers and help us achieve that vision for Building a Talent Strong Texas.
I think one of the nice things, I know in each of our sectors we have trade publications, right? So we see those on a regular basis. One of the things in higher ed we're beginning to see are layoffs, right? Not in Texas, but in other states throughout the United States, in which they are limiting services or closing academic or workforce programs in particular. That is not the case here in Texas in historic investments in community colleges in financial aid and support.
No, that's right. So we were up across every sector. I will say our fall enrollments year over year were up about 37,000 students. 25,000 of those were in our community colleges, particularly in workforce programs and also new financial aid for students in dual credit programs. Yes. Has enabled the colleges to enroll more students in academic and workforce programs while they're still in high school. And so those are critical investments in the future of Texas and also are getting a lot of national attention. So we've just at the agency, we've hosted delegations from a dozen other states who've sent teams, even as we're working on the rules right now to try to, folks are interested in and watching very closely what's happening in Texas.
I think that's wonderful. It sounds like it's just the perfect picture, right? So I think for each and every one of us, the leadership of the commissioner in Austin, support from individuals like Senator Menendez, right? All of our colleagues, the business sector, in creating a talent strong Texas. Is there anything we should be mindful of as we go forward, either as practitioners in education, as citizens within the state, as in future years?
Yeah. So number one, I would say, even as Commissioner of Higher Education, this isn't really just about higher education, right? This is about jobs and economic opportunities. It's about what kind of Texas we want to live in, what kind of communities we want to live in. So again, what's critical to this work isn't just to have more people earning credentials. It's to make sure that those credentials are going to equip people to take advantage of the new jobs being created, of the opportunities that are there in our communities. And we have so much more work to do. So we have nearly 4 million Texans who have some college and no credential. We have more than 2 million Texans who don't have high school diplomas or equivalencies. So as an aside, I have to say, so another provision of House Bill 8 that sort of flew below the radar screen, we're actually creating a new high school diploma in Texas that's going to be awarded by community colleges. And so I called up Mike Flores and I said,
I thought I was in trouble.
I need 5 colleges. I need colleges that could be the leaders in developing and deploying this new high school diploma. And before I'd finished my pitch, Mike had already said we're in. So I deeply appreciate the partnership with the Alamo colleges in designing. This is an innovative competency-based high school diploma to help those adults who are enrolled in your workforce programs be able to unlock their potential and advance their careers. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think what's most critical, you can see why we enjoy partnering with the Commissioner and the leadership that he's provided, and it has actually been successive investments in the last 2 sessions, I would say in particular, right? In higher education, in particular, the most recent through House Bill 8 for the 50 community colleges, and we do all work together to ensure we serve our communities. So we're fortunate for your leadership. Please call us anytime that we can be of service, right? We are actually—
I'm going to remind you said that.
We're looking forward to being able to provide that opportunity. A fifth of San Antonians and folks in our region do not have a high school equivalency or diploma. So we definitely see the need for providing that. And the other part is just the pride we have as San Antonians, right? I know you came down from Austin, but we have a lot of pride in our community. We know that we're a growing community and an aspirational community, and with your continued partnership, we know we can do even better and more. Let's thank the Commissioner for joining us this afternoon.